Episode 10, discussing Game of Thrones, Season 6, Episode 9, Battle of the Bastards. Alright, the season is winding down. This was number 9, so I'm here with Kate. We'll have this review and next week's review, and then I'll have to actually start talking about non-Game of Thrones stuff. Okay, so hello, Kate.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thanks. So, the Dance of Dragons book ends us with the book ends with two cliffhangers, the Battle of Fire and the Battle of Ice, which is the slavers going after Meereen. That's the Battle of Fire. And the Battle of Ice is Stannis going after Winterfell. So, we have the Battle of Fire and the Battle of Ice concluded in this one episode. So start with the Battle of Fire. What are your thoughts?
I liked how the episode started right off with it and it jumped right in with it. I thought it was interesting that Dany seemed to take some time coming in, talking to Tyrion and talking to the slavers, being diplomatic even though she was never going to be diplomatic because they had already gone way too far and attacked their city. Like, why not just do that? Why did she have to talk to people about it first?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. She's talking to Tyrion and you can hear the things exploding in the background and see all the people in the city getting killed while they're like chit-chatting.
Like she comes in and when the episode that we left off on with it last week, there's still a bunch of people in the room when she comes in the window and it's like, clear the room please, I'm going to talk to Tyrion here for a little bit and we're going to chill and then we're going to do something.
Yeah.
I found that part kind of odd. And then why meet with the slavers? Why even bother to do that?
The conversation between her and Tyrion was important, though. She was having shades of the Mad King come out in her. She was going to destroy everything and put the cities into the ground and all this stuff. And Tyrion kind of dissuaded her.
Or at the very least, reminded her of her heritage and that she was getting kind of caught up in it. She is a Targaryen, and Targaryens historically, since they came to Westeros, have this hey, we rule kind of thing. They're conquerors. And so she's acting that bit, but she's also been, but let's have peace and victims are, like keep casualties to a minimum. And
what's the saying in the books? It's like every time a Targaryen is born, you flip a coin to see if you're going to get a
something like that.
Crazy person or not.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's also laying more groundwork though for this. Like, everybody's aware that there's a bunch of wildfire underneath King's Landing at this point.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a strange conversation. So I was under the impression that Jaime telling Brienne why he killed the Mad King was the only time he ever revealed that, right? That Tyrion knew that was kind of a surprise to me tonight. Like, I think that was there just to remind us that there was wildfire.
Although it was a very important conversation, as you said, between him and Dany, in the context of the situation, I thought it made no sense, but I wish they could have had it in some different way. Like, she could have conquered all those ships and then won that immediate battle, and then she could have talked about conquering the other cities, and then he could have said that. But, like, it's still something where I'm trying to go back when he's talking to Brienne. I feel like you're right. I don't know for sure, honestly, on this, but I feel like Jaime's whole shtick was, everyone's going to paint me out to be this Kingslayer and bad guy, so I'll just play the part. And it's not until we see him with Brienne that we really see that there's so much more to him, and he's actually this unsung hero of what happened. And so, like, all along he's been telling Tyrion that it kind of takes a little bit away from that.
Right, I agree. It definitely lessens impact if that wasn't a big secret, but anyways, whatever. So Dany was, getting all Targaryen-ish, and Tyrion talked her down a little bit, and then the battle happens pretty much as expected. I mean, the dragons are going to be unstoppable in that situation. I was a little disheartened to see that Tyrion, I mentioned this last week, Tyrion releasing those two dragons was basically pointless. They busted through the wall. They probably could have melted their chains and just gotten out on their own at any point.
Yeah, I guess they were just waiting for their brother Drogon and Dany to come back to want to see the light of day and not be in captivity. They were a lot stronger than I would have anticipated after being underground for so long. And I agree with you. They busted out of their containment facility very easily after like one little battle cry from Drogon. So
right, but still, I mean, whatever.
It was fun to see them fly around and use their firepower.
Yeah, I'm trying to not be as negative as we sometimes are.
Yeah, but this season's deserved it, though.
Yeah, but this is a good episode, all in all. So
I agree.
I've just been looking at some of the Facebook comments, and people are so pumped about this episode. I don't want them to start listening to us bitching like a couple of picky people.
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say, like, overall, I did really enjoy the episode, but I do have some criticism. So, I mean, if there are people listening who don't want that, then stop right now. Or
yeah, no, my criticisms will come out too. And the Danny scenes, they're certainly criticizable all the time.
But I mean, it was super fun. Like, I'm glad they didn't delay too much with the dragons, and it's fun to watch them actually be in action. Like, it made me really think about what it was like when the first Targaryens came over to Westeros and how they won. Like, how Harrenhal turned out to be what it was. It was supposed to be this, like, you know, fortress that couldn't be penetrated, and it never really lived to see its day because of the dragons.
Right. Danny certainly seems unstoppable. Even the White Walkers seem pathetic compared to what she's got.
I was wondering if she has, like, a single word to call them off.
Yeah, she must.
Like, does she whistle or something? Or
so the Unsullied again proved to be completely worthless, as the Sons of the Harpy are just slaughtering people outside, and who knows where the Unsullied are.
Yeah, what was the whole point of? Did the Sons of the Harpy are like, let's just grab some random people and take them outside the city gates?
Well, I was under the impression those people. Yeah, the Sons of the Harpy were trying to get in, and those people were trapped outside or something like that. But either way, I had completely forgotten that she had an army of Dothraki with her until they started running up.
Well, and what I'm curious about is clearly she cares about how people live. And what I mean by that is when she's talking to Yara and Theon, she said, hey, you know, like, if we do this deal, you guys can't rape and plunder anymore. That's out. And Yara's response is like, hey, that's our whole way of life. And she's, again, like, I don't care. And okay. Did she have this discussion with her, you know, tens of thousands Dothraki horde here?
Right. I don't see how the Dothraki can possibly go into Meereen.
I mean, the Dothraki are
right,
just like the Ironborn, just on land.
Yeah, and probably worse, probably more brutal. So that'll be interesting to see if they address that at all. Her conversation with Theon and Yara was interesting because 2 minutes earlier she had been talking, you know, sounding like the mad Targaryen, and then now she was talking like a completely peacemaking. And actually, I have long been thinking, I mentioned this before, that Dany was going to be kind of the villain of the story or really lead to disaster in the city. And when the Targaryen half of her starts coming out, that's what it sounds like. But then when she meets with these people, and she's going to tame the the Ironborn, apparently, that kind of gives me hope that maybe it won't be such a disaster when she comes over.
Yeah, she's all about the girl power, which,
yeah.
I mean, I'm curious if that's what George R. R. Martin is going to be doing with some of these characters, because so much of this setting includes just men constantly being in power. They can only be the heads of the castles, they can only be the king and things like that, and women just don't really have a whole lot of power overall in this world. And so, like, at least the show, it's trying to show now that, like, there's a change, there's a shift happening where women can be rulers and just might be.
Yeah, well, there's no way this is going to go down in the books like this, because in the books, the Greyjoys do indeed show up during the Battle of Fire, but it's Euron Greyjoy, because Stannis has Theon and Yara captured, so they're in the north. They're completely out of this picture. So Euron shows up like he had planned to do in the show. And not only that, but he shows up with a horn that he can blow that he thinks he can control the dragons with, which they've completely left out of the show.
And he's also converted to the Lord of Light.
Has he?
I think so.
I'm not aware of any of that.
I feel like I'm remembering, like, their ship is attacked and he almost dies, and there happened to be a priest aboard, and the priest kind of helps his wounds heal, and he starts converting before he arrives in Meereen.
I'll have to look that up. If that's correct, I'll leave it in this episode, and if it's not, we'll ditch it.
take it all out.
Yeah, you're probably right, though. But Euron...
It's been several years since I read that part.
So there's some sample chapters out from The Winds of Winter, and I'm just going to do a quick minor spoiler here. I haven't read it, but I was reading about it. Euron not only has this horn that can maybe control the dragons, he has a suit of armor made of Valyrian steel. So he's like going to be like the Terminator walking around there. Huh. So that's really interesting. He's going to be a very formidable villain. And now that Ramsay's out of the picture, which we'll get to later, Euron's going to be his replacement as the bad person on the show. Anything else about Meereen and the Battle of Fire, or should we just get right to the Battle of Ice?
Yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts.
So on to the Battle of Ice. Another cliffhanger from the books, as I mentioned. Unless well, I'm not even going to get into it. I've talked about it a bunch of times, but this is Stannis' battle in the books, I think. But so I thought this was good, of course, the battle, but not just the battle, the build up to it. One of my complaints earlier is that there had been almost no build up to this battle, and they managed to get it in this episode. And I thought they handled it with care. There was good dialogue, good acting, good, Tormund and Davos walking around and Jon and Sansa talking. I thought it was pretty good, slow burn leading up to the fight.
Yeah, I feel like they did in this episode what they failed to do throughout almost the entire season leading up to this battle, where they paced us through it, the timing made sense, when they showed certain scenes. It was enjoyable, the conversations between the characters, and you're getting more and more tense until you know, well, when is this battle that I know is coming going to happen?
Yeah, and then it finally happens, and when things start, so this was directed by Miguel Sapochnik. I don't know if I'm saying it right. He's the one that did Hard Home last year, and he's doing next week's episode. He appears to be the go-to guy this season for the big battles. In the past, they had gone with Neil Marshall, who did the Battle of Blackwater and The Watchers on the Wall. So this one, I wonder if they went to this guy specifically. Well, they wanted it a little bit different. There was a lot of chaos in the battle, and then closing in reminded me of Hard Home, the way that there was so many people in one spot.
Yeah, and so, like, for people who watched the Inside the Episode, they talked a little bit about how they did a lot of research on historic battles for this. I really did appreciate the time and the care that went into this episode, and from so many different fronts. I thought that it was very well directed. I liked all the different shots. You could tell there were so many different shots. I really appreciated how they took John's point of view with it, so it wasn't just scene after scene after scene, not knowing really where it was coming from. You were often following John through it. I thought they did a good job of making you feel maybe what John was feeling in the moment, and just the true carnage of war. It's not just a fun battle scene to watch, which I think they did a good job with the action. They did a really nice job just showing the horrors of war.
Yeah, I thought that this was very Mel Gibson inspired when Rickon is running away from Ramsay, who's shooting arrows at him, clearly toying with him. And that was straight out of Apocalypto almost. I don't know if you remember that scene where they let the Indians go, and then the other Indians start throwing spears and stuff at them as they're running. So that very much reminded me of that. And it probably reminded me of it so much once the battle started, because obviously the clashes looked like Braveheart. Everything from the horses running into each other to Ramsay shooting arrows into the melee, hitting his own people. That was straight out of the Edward the Longshanks handbook. The one time he just destroys William Wallace in Braveheart was exactly the strategy we saw tonight by Ramsay. But that being said, inside the battle was very original, I thought, with the horses and the angles and stuff like that. And I really liked seeing John get trampled, how bad that would be.
And it happens because people panic and people quickly go under, and it's hard to get back up. It was just chaos in there. So I just appreciated the choreography for all that we saw in this. Like this is like on a movie caliber level here of what we saw on a show. Yeah, and what was also nice is that we got to see some strategy, not just Ramsay doing the Braveheart thing, but then we got the surrounding with the shields and spears, kind of like 300, like yeah, they were saying it was based on a Roman battle where this same thing happened.
And then before that, we had showing how helpless the wildlings are in military matters. They might be, like Tormund is a great individual fighter, right, but he has no military strategy, and they had to explain to him what Stannis used to defeat him at the wall. At the wall. Yeah. But at least he knew it too. It wasn't like he was unaware of that, like the way he said it was like piss on snow or something, that he was aware that they don't understand battle in the same way, and then that Stannis coming in was a clear indication of that. Right, and it made me wonder about the Dothraki, who are somewhat like the wildlings. I was just rereading the part in Game of Thrones where Dany is asking Jorah, this is in the first book, if the Dothraki could really take the Seven Kingdoms. And he said when he first met the Dothraki, he thought no. He thought that a bunch of knights would defeat them just like wildlings. But the big strength of the Dothraki, if they ever do make it to Westeros, is their ability to shoot arrows while on horseback. Yeah. I guess like Genghis Khan, that's what he was famous for, right? So that's a big advantage the Dothraki have. Anyway, so that's going off on a tangent, but I did like the strategy discussion in tonight's episode, and the strategy, not just I'm talking about it, but it being displayed in the battle. I'm really sad that Rickon died, but I feel that's at least consistent with what I would have expected for the characterization of Ramsay. The moment that the Umbers handed him over, he was as good as dead. I think we got, last week in our predictions, we picked Rickon and Wan, right? Are we 2 for 2? I don't remember. I 100% picked Rickon, but I thought he'd be burning on a cross. I can't remember if we picked Wan, but I think we did.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sad that both of those, I mean, was Wan the last of the Giants then? Is that another race with the Children of the Forest that got completely wiped out this season?
That's exactly what I'm wondering, too. Are Giants now extinct? And are the Children of the Forest now extinct?
And he was so loyal to the very end to help out John.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting to me. I kept thinking about in this episode where I actually was hoping that the Karstarks or the Umbers would end up going against the Bolton. And I kept kind of hoping at any moment when things were looking really bleak that they would just turn around and start killing the Boltons. And
I thought the Umbers would flip or at least think about flipping when Ramsay started shooting arrows into their own people.
Right. And when he refused, because they set up how John tried to end it by just doing one-on-one, and he said he planted the seed of, will it matter that he won't fight for his own men? Like, will they want to fight for him if he won't for them? And so I was wondering, that might be great setup. And even though it wouldn't have been a complete shock if they turned double agent, I still was hoping for it, and I'm a little disappointed there was none of that. Because...
Well, and the guy, the little John Umber, his dad was killed at the Red Wedding.
Right.
So he should have flipped. In the books, there's Umbers on both sides, for the Boltons and for Stannis.
Well, and the irony is that supposedly the Umbers in the series here joined Ramsay simply because they don't like the Wildlings, and yet the Wildlings were so much more loyal to the Starks than these Northmen were.
Yeah, no, I think that the showrunners just picked a couple houses at random to put in.
It hurts me, though, that they picked the Umbers. I wish they picked they made up their own house or did another one, because I just feel like, I don't know, the Umbers, like you said, they lost a family member at the Red Wedding. Like, it seems so treasonous to me. Not only did they turn because they lost a family member at the Red Wedding and went with the Boltons, but they handed over Rickon, who had a legitimate claim to the... Like, they literally were the cause of the death of a Stark.
Yeah.
They're not going to come back from that.
I did like that John Umber was getting the better of Tormund, just because even though I like Tormund a lot, I like to see that he's not the ultimate badass in the whole everything. Like, it's sometimes nice to see that everyone can lose. And Tormund ended up winning when he bit his throat out when they got pressed together, but I think in a fair fight, Little John would have won that fight, which I just thought was kind of fun as a viewer to watch.
Yeah. Well, and it kept it where they're both fierce fighters. Like, I mean, Little John, I think, was really well cast. He looks like what you'd expect a Northman to be.
Right. And
it's fun to see these two different warriors clash. And there's definitely some setup for Davos finding that whole pyre that Shireen was in that made sure to get Shireen, but her little horse didn't make it.
Yeah.
Which I guess, okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
But, they're definitely setting up that he's mad at Melisandre and knows what went down.
Right. I wonder if Jon or Sansa will be obligated to punish her, or is that even any of their business or whatever? It'll be interesting to see, because for the previews for next week, Davos says, we see him yelling, "Tell them what you did." So obviously he's making Melisandre confess. But I don't know what the response is going to be. She didn't really help with the battle, but she did bring back Jon, so they do owe her something. So I don't know. What
did you make of when he asked her for counsel, when Jon Snow asked Melisandre?
I guess I hadn't really thought of it. It was a welcome scene to remind us that Melisandre was there, I guess, and to show that Jon is trying to be open-minded about things.
Part of me was a little surprised that he was so open to what she had to say, but not his own sister.
Yeah, but
he seemed reluctant to listen to her.
Yeah, but Melisandre's magical.
Yeah, which I think he's still out to lunch on. I don't know, for some reason I don't think I like it. Yeah. I know that much.
Quickly, while we're on Davos, let me just remind 13 listeners that in the books, Rickon is not dead and Davos is not there, and there's no there except for with Stannis, but Davos has gone to an island called Skagos to try to find Rickon and smuggle him out of there. Rickon and Asha went there to flee whoever was chasing them. Davos has been sent by Wyman Manderley, who I thought we were going to get this season, but I thought he was cast for some reason, but apparently not. And Wyman Manderley tells Davos if he can save Rickon, Wyman is one of the Stark bannermen, says if he can save Rickon, then Wyman will back Stannis in the battle. So that's totally different. However Rickon dies, it's not going to be at the hands of Ramsay, if he dies at all.
Yeah.
So that's just some little info for the non-book readers. Okay.
I will offer that Jon is just the luckiest guy in the world in terms of he missed every lethal arrow that came towards him. And there was a lot of arrows that came down when he was out there. He didn't get a mortal sword wound. He was never trampled by a horse or get suffocated by a bunch of bodies. It's amazing that he survived with some flesh wounds.
Yeah. I mean, of course he was going to, but it was I guess I didn't really mind that. There was one point where like 12 arrows landed around him, and I was like, ooh, that's pretty lucky.
Well, like Ramsay let how many, I don't know what you call it, volleys of arrows go, and he never got hit once with it, which I never felt that he was in danger of dying, but it still was like, wow. Like, I would have, maybe if he could have picked up a sword, or not a sword, but a shield or something.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty tense when he was getting trampled. I didn't think he was going to die that way, but it was pretty tense.
Yeah, I liked it all. I'm just saying that, man, he's the only one out of all those people who didn't get hit at all. And I guess maybe it could happen, but like, it was just more the arrows piece where it's like, yeah.
So, should we get to the negative parts?
Yeah, I do have some comments.
All right, we'll start small. Okay, so a couple little things is that the snows that defeated Stannis are just apparently gone, and the north is perfect weather for battle.
It did show some snowing at night.
It did show some snowing, but I'm under the impression that those snows that hit Stannis, in the books at least, are here to stay. Like, that is winter is coming, as in winter is here.
Yeah.
And there is going to be
snow.
Well, and
that's why he had to go when he did, because they couldn't wait for winter.
So, right, if he'd have just waited 2 weeks, he would have been fine.
Yeah.
So it's just a little thing that they had the snow come in as a plot device to defeat Stannis, and then had to go away now. And if it's a big part of this story, which I think it is in at least the books, it'll probably come back now. So that's my first little criticism. What about you?
I'm going to go to some bigger ones, I guess.
Okay, I'll just go to one other little one. You would think that they'd give one a tree or something to hit people with. Like, a little club for him. He's like swapping at the spears with his hand. So we were talking about strategy earlier, and I did like seeing the strategy, but they really didn't think that one through.
Couldn't he just like uproot a tree and just use that?
Right. And then my only other complaints, I'll let you go a little bit. I just have a couple other minor ones.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to hear mine now?
Yeah.
All right. Ramsay runs back to Winterfell, and they talk about a siege. There's not enough men for a siege and all that stuff. But then they just had a door. All they had was a little door.
That's actually one of mine, where it's like,
even if the giant wasn't there, it would have taken them just a little while to build
wooden door.
Yeah,
like most of these castles have like iron gates.
Right, so they could have just built a battering ram and plowed it down in short time.
Like, how has Winterfell survived all this time?
Well, right, it's supposed to be one of the harder castles to capture, and then just right there, the giant. They just So that was kind of weak, but whatever. And then the castle, of course, was not prepared. You'd think they would have all their archers on the wall.
Well, in that sense, John was right. Ramsay was overconfident.
Yeah. And then, of course, the big one, which you probably have coming, is that who did not see Littlefinger coming? I'm sorry, if you didn't expect that, you were watching this show half stoned or something, because that was the most obvious thing ever coming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this relates a little bit to what I was saying of like how I was hoping that like the Umbers were actually really for the Starks or something, because I wasn't sure about that, and it would have been something unexpected where when you and I were speaking at the last podcast, where I was like, I hope I'm wrong. What I wanted to be wrong was this to not be like, I enjoyed watching it, but I felt like I knew what I was going to watch all along. And so that they were going to have the battle, it was going to get really hopeless for Jon, and then here come the Knights of the Vale to save the day. And so this actually is going to lead into one of my strongest criticisms, and it's like, man, I really want to love Sansa's character, but I am struggling with it. And it's not Sophie Turner's portrayal of her, it's the writing. So I want to be really clear on that. Because it's not her actual character, it's just...
When Jon said, when are we going to have more men? All she had to say was like, maybe in like 3 hours.
Well, why was she being so secretive about knowing about Littlefinger and that, where she is yelling at Jon for not including her, what she has to offer, right. And she's like, you need more men, when all along she knows that there are more men if she just asks, which she does ask but she doesn't tell anybody.
I don't think she knew they were coming for sure. She knew that she reached out.
But why not tell him?
Right, exactly.
And so this is something where the writing, unless they are setting up for her and Jon to have a falling out or a very distrusting relationship or something along that line, there is no good reason. I mean, it's like... she just being this petulant child where she's like, I know we don't have enough people, but actually we do, and I'm just unilaterally going to make this decision just because I feel like it. Like, it just made her seem childish, and at a time where she could be seen so much stronger, and it just made no sense to me. And did she have a GPS on Littlefinger to know exactly where to find him, to ride up with him then at that end?
Right, I noticed that the little girl Mormont was with Jon and Davos ready for battle, and Sansa was not there.
Yeah.
So...
Which makes sense. She doesn't know how to fight, where the Mormonts do.
I don't think the 10-year-old girl Mormont knows how to physically fight. It makes sense for Sansa not to be
there. She
there.
knows how to a little bit.
But I'm just saying that I noticed that there was one girl there and not the other.
Right.
And Melisandre was also not there. So when Sansa wasn't there, it was just more confirmation for me that probably what we all expected would happen happened.
Yeah, I didn't like it. It was completely unnecessary, and it makes it seem like there's this discord there, and for what reason?
Right.
I don't see how Jon could not feel betrayed, even though it saved them.
Right.
Of like, how could you do this and not tell anyone? Like, hopefully they get a little bit better with her character next season.
Yeah. Yep. So we have Ramsay was killed. I like that. The dogs getting him I thought was brutal and terrible death and poetic justice and well-deserved and all that stuff. So
yeah,
that was good.
I have a couple things I'll say with that, where we've seen him fight when Yara comes for Theon, and he loves it.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
good at sword play, and he's good at fighting. He's not someone who's going to run away from a fight because he loved it then, jumped out of bed right away, and it's like, who was this guy?
Yeah, I saw some comments on Facebook. They're like, classic bully, doesn't know how to actually fight, just talks big. And I was like, well, wait a minute. He did fight in a ridiculous scene. He fought the Ironborn with his shirt off.
Right? I think he jumped straight out of bed, and
Yeah.
I think they put some pants on him for the scene, but I feel like the Ramsay that they made him out to be wouldn't even care, and he's all like loving it and dicing people up, and then here it's like, what just happened?
But the Ironborn are similar to the Unsullied in that they exist basically to get tooled in every scene. But yeah, so Ramsay actually is a skilled fighter, and I would have liked to have seen some kind of throwdown with Jon.
Yeah, like clearly all under no direction, and these wildlings who have no army training knew to just wait and let Jon do this and get these arrows thrown at him so he could hit Ramsay with like.
Well, Jon, they let him do that not only because it was Jon's fight, but I think Jon had some determination in him where they knew, like, okay, we gotta let this guy go after it. He's got the shield, and had he ever been in real danger, they probably wouldn't have intervened.
And like, okay, I'll get that, and I'll get Jon being very focused and just wanting to kill him. Like his humanity's kind of gone in that moment. It's the Ramsay part that I just didn't get. So that's my criticism of that piece. And then I just found it so interesting that his dogs came out right on cue after Ramsay wakes up from his injuries and after he and Sansa have a little chat. Then they come out and smell his blood and then eat him. You know, like, if he was out there and they were that hungry, they would have come after him right away. So they should have had him outside the kennels, wait for him to wake up, they have their little discussion, and then throw him in there. But like, it makes me sometimes wonder what these writers are thinking just in terms of the logic of putting things together like that. Do they think we're not going to notice that? And I think I would be more forgiving if they haven't had the same problem episode after episode after episode.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of conveniences, including the speed at which the Greyjoys got to Meereen and the speed at which the Knights of the Vale got to their... I mean, basically, traveling Westeros, everyone's got like little jetpacks now because if you think about early on, the whole first season is travel. Like, Robert goes to Winterfell, and then so much stuff happens on the road back as they're making their way to King's Landing. That's how we meet Joffrey, and Joffrey gets bit by Arya's dog. And when Catelyn takes Tyrion hostage, she has to go to the Vale where his sister is because it's too hard to walk to Winterfell. So this is a big part of the early part of the show, is the realistic amount of time it takes to travel a country when you got nothing but horses. And now they're pretty much just putting people wherever they need them.
Right. I understand that the show can't have pacing be the same for the different storylines. It's just going to be impossible for them to continue every storyline and have the same time pacing. But in this sense, pacing, I completely agree with you of them being like, how did the Knights of the Vale get up there so quickly? Like, Sansa sends a raven a night before, 2 nights before the battle, and I mean, Littlefinger would have already just been planning, which I guess I wouldn't put past him that she was going to ask for his help, and they were already headed north.
There's a theory out there that Littlefinger sent the pink letter, which is probably not the case. But if he did, he might have been awfully close by and ready to go. Because if his eye is on Winterfell and on Sansa, you know, he can become...
Well, it's definitely on Sansa.
Right. If he can somehow get in good with Sansa and convince her to marry him, which I doubt he will, but then he could be Lord of Winterfell and the Eyrie. So Littlefinger's playing the game. and he was ready to rock it here.
Yeah, he's playing the game, and I think he's going to keep doing it. I think the weakness in his armor is going to be Sansa, and I think that she'll actually be his undoing.
The one last twist that I thought might be coming, I didn't really think it, but I thought it would have been a nice unexpected twist, is when Ramsay was like, you can't kill me, you're part of me now. I thought maybe she was like, your house is going to die, your name is going to die. I was like, maybe she's going to get pregnant,
I was thinking that too, and I was like, dear God, no.
It's, story-wise, I think it's a little weird that she's not pregnant with how often he went there, but that's last season stuff. But that would have been a nice little unexpected twist. I don't know about it would have been an unexpected twist.
Yeah. I guess just to finish up on what I'm saying is I think that in the books what makes them so spectacular, and don't get me wrong, George R. R. Martin has made some mistakes, but for the most part, his writing is not lazy. But sometimes in the show, it gets lazy, and that's where my criticism of, like, the dog's just waiting to come out at the right time, it's lazy to me. And when it's just here or there, okay, I have this willing suspension of disbelief, but at some point it starts to be too much, especially on the cusp of the Arya episode last week with all that, where, I actually do have all these stab wounds, but I'm amazing at fighting and beating the wave.
Yeah.
It's just, I just wish they weren't as lazy with the writing sometimes. Again, I liked the episode. It was fun to watch. Sometimes my heart was in my throat through parts of it. I wish we could have seen more discord amongst the different houses. So even though we don't have some of the houses in the books, we do have the Umbers and the Karstarks and the Boltons, and I wish we could see that even though they're on the quote-unquote same side, there's still going to be some discord there, and the books kind of shows that. I think that would have been fun to see.
Yeah, we essentially forgot about the Karstarks. We knew they were there from an earlier episode, but we didn't know that based on tonight. It might have showed their flag or something. But yeah, in the books, the Boltons are in an interesting spot with Stannis outside. The Boltons are infighting. The Boltons and the Freys are inside Winterfell, and they're fighting with the Manderleys and a few other people that are inside, and it's kind of a mess in there.
Yeah, Roose is really trying to keep things from going south fast within his own walls.
Right, and of course Roose is still alive, who I wish he didn't die in the show, because I thought he was an infinitely more interesting villain than Ramsay. But, so this was the end of Ramsay tonight, and I did enjoy that actor. Even though he was written to just be so cartoon villain, I thought the actor was just funny. I liked the looks on his face.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
He did a good job.
He was just a little shit.
And the one last thought I had on Winterfell is, what happens when, assuming it does, the wall comes down and the White Walkers come through? Winterfell's going to be the first stop, and whoever is there is presumably toast. It's so hard to predict that far in the future.
Yeah.
But
now this is where we're at. Like, this is where the story has taken us, where we're going to have Dany, who's now going to come over to Westeros, which we've all been waiting for that since, like, season 1. And now, since season 1, too, it's like we are aware, as an audience, of this huge threat. And it's the main threat of the Whites. God, what are the main guys? Like the Night's King and stuff.
Yeah, the White Walkers.
The White Walkers. And so it's like, I kind of, like I get it, because you have to kind of just take things one thing at a time. And so it's like Jon had to completely not worry about that and deal with Ramsay. But now it's like, okay, let's get back to what we all know is the real big threat and the real big problem. Melisandre knows this, Davos knows this, Jon knows this. So let's see them actually do something about it.
Yeah, they're going to have to really fortify the wall, and hopefully they'll get there before the Night's King does, assuming that's where the Night's King is headed right now. Which is good. Now that Jon and Sansa are in charge of Winterfell, they will be able to... I don't know where they'll get the troops from. Their whole army was just wiped out.
Well, I think there were a lot of northern houses that didn't participate.
Yeah.
I think they didn't side with the Boltons in terms of actually fighting for them. So, like, the Glovers didn't participate. So I think there's going to be a lot of houses like that are actually going to maybe come and be part of the force. The Vale has joined them, which is a huge house.
Yeah, if you look at the Wikipedia page for the March on Winterfell or the Battle for Winterfell coming up in the books, it's something like 13 houses on each side for the Boltons and for Stannis. So yeah, if whoever wins that or however they get Winterfell back, yeah, they're going to have those houses. But the Night's Watch is... Jon's going to have to convince everyone the threat is real in order to get volunteers over there.
Right, and at first, he's going to have to explain that he's not a deserter, which is clearly, like, Ramsay treated him like a deserter of, like, hey, I'll pardon you for deserting. So it's like, it's going to have to be more explained why he's allowed to no longer be a part of the Night's Watch.
Well, maybe he'll go back now. He left and he quit, but he did tell that Gren or Pip or whoever he left in charge, Dollar said he did tell Eddie he was coming back. I feel like his story as Lord Commander is over, but he's still bastard, and Sansa is the heir to Winterfell. So Jon, it's not like Winterfell is his. It's Sansa's now until Bran gets back, because Bran's the last one. So Jon could go back to the Night's Watch. Yeah, but she doesn't have any authority compared to Sansa.
But Sansa's been married twice. So I think in this world of Westeros, if you're a woman and once you marry, you're not really a part of that house anymore.
Well, that's kind of what got screwed up. Just side comment, way back in the last season when Ramsay marries Sansa, which of course does not happen in the books, she's a Lannister. He can't marry her, or you would think there'd be some consequence to that. I know the Lannisters are in no position to dispute it, and they're mad at her they think she killed Joffrey, but...
Well, and I don't know if they have certain rules of consummation, which it never was, so that could have been something where it could have been maybe annulled, I don't know, but that was Lady Mormont's thing of, like, you're a Lannister and then a Bolton, you're not actually a Stark anymore. Where Arya, she's still a Stark in that sense.
Well, either way, Jon is not legitimized as of now, and he needs a king to legitimize him. So he's not the leader of Winterfell. He probably needs to go either back to the Wall, or we'll see what happens in King's...
I don't see him joining the Night's Watch again.
He could also make it his mission to go to King's Landing or other parts of the realm and get forces for the Night's Watch.
I see his mission being beating the White Walkers.
Yeah, so it'll be... Who knows where they'll go.
There's only a few people who truly understand the real danger right now. Most of the realm doesn't believe it at all, which was clearly shown in the episode when Sam goes back to Horn Hill. Yeah. They think it's all just stories. All these, now there's not a whole lot of wildlings left, at least the fighting ones, but there's still a bunch of non-fighting wildlings. And so there's all these people who've been wanting to move south of the Wall because of this threat. It's not like people are just going to camp out there and just hang out.
Yeah, I got a feeling this show is not going to address a lot of these complicated sociological questions about where the wildlings go or whatever, but it'll be interesting to see where Jon goes, where he goes from here. And going into the next season, we're going to have to wait a whole year for it. Of course, we got one more episode, but new pieces are in place, especially if something really big goes down in King's Landing next week, to where we'll be on a whole new venture next season, presumably.
Yeah, and hopefully Winds of Winter will be out, although the show writers have to have a lot of this written really fast. They film in the fall and wrap up filming by the beginning of the next calendar year, so we really need Winds of Winter to come out soon, because again, we were talking about this last episode, that we don't have that much more than where the Dance of Dragons book left off.
Right, yeah. Considering that this season 6 was the first season of where we don't know what's going to happen because the books aren't up to this point, very little happened beyond what we knew was going to happen. Like, we were like, oh man, we're in uncharted territory. Who knows what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But it's almost spun its wheels in place for a lot of the things.
Right. Like, I feel a lot of, like, the Marine and the Battle for Winterfell, which I think is going to be cool in the books. And again, it was cool here. I can see all that happening in the first half of the book.
Well, right. I think that George R. R. Martin has said that the Battle of Ice and the Battle of Fire happen at the beginning of the Winds of Winter. So it's... there's a whole lot of territory yet to explore. But anyways, so this is getting pretty long. I think as far as themes go, the show's called The Battle of Bastards. I don't think there's any mystery about what the themes are there. The only other one is it's Father's Day, and they were talking about how everyone in Meereen had shit fathers. Tyrion, the Mad King, and Balon Greyjoy. And I give this episode a solid 9. It was one of the better ones. I think I still like the Battle of Blackwater as my favorite battle episode, but this is right up there with it. I might have liked this better than Hard Home, and I definitely liked it better than The Watchers on the Wall, which was a great episode, but I think this tops that. Yeah,
I mean, you can definitely tell that there was funding behind this one, and they used it well. Like, they did a really great job. I remember reading that filming a battle scene with horses is extremely difficult to do, but I think they did a really nice job with this battle. It was impressive. Yeah, it's hard to compare some of the other battles to this one.
For the listeners here, if you get a chance, watch the making of the battle. You'll be amazed how much of it is not CGI. I was actually going to complain about the direction because I thought it looked a little too CGI-ish. And then we saw the making of the battle, and so many of it was real horses.
Yeah.
So I think the shaky cam strategy that he employed, which he also used in Hard Home, gave the illusion that it was more fake than it was. But yeah, anyways, so very good episode, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what plot points they cover for next week, and I think there's going to be some open-ended things for going into next season that we're not going to see any wrap-up that they might have started this season or carrying on from previous seasons.
I just want a big resolution in King's Landing. If that means a big explosion, I'm happy with that. The death of Tommen or something. I want some big thing to happen there. All right, cool. Well, Bastard Bowl is over. Congratulations, everybody.